Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday to each of you. We're so glad you're here. We've been expecting you, as we always do this time of the week. I am Dr. Nika White. I am the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC, and we are really excited to be able to bring Intentional Conversations podcast to you and to have you as part of our community. Welcome. Please share in the chat where you are joining today's conversation from. It is always a treat for us to see the many different geographies that are represented all across the US. And sometimes we even have folks outside of the US. And we don't take that for granted, as you could be doing anything this hour, but the fact that you spend it with us lets us know that you value the time and the content that we bring, as well as the community. And we're so grateful for you. I also want to shout out all of the folks that are joining us by LinkedIn Live. We tend to have a good viewing audience there, as well as those who join us as part of our Zoom community. If you feel inclined for this community to connect with you beyond this hour of time, then I also will invite you to share in the chat your LinkedIn information. That lets us know that you're willing for the folks here to reach out to you. And I certainly encourage to be in community with each of you if we're not already connected. So my team will drop my LinkedIn information into the chat. Here at NWC, we really do value disability inclusion, and as such, we have enabled the closed caption feature for each of you that would find that a way to enhance your experience today. And so I hope that you will take advantage of that. I also want you to know that the NWC team has been working tirelessly over the past 5 years to bring this virtual production experience to the broader community. We are five. That is a milestone. That is not an easy accomplishment. And so we're glad to be able to be here for 5 years, but it's not because of anything that we've done. It's because you have supported us in many ways to let us know that you value this time and you value this community. And we're so grateful for that. Throughout the show today, if there's anything that's said that resonates with you and you want to make sure that you're standing in solidarity with other members of this community, sharing resources, affirmations, emojis, reactions, whatever it is, then we certainly encourage that, invite you to use the chat for that purpose. And not to worry, if you're on LinkedIn Live, please make sure you're using the comment section for all of those same reasons. My team is watching that closely, and we're bringing it over into the Zoom chat just to make sure we're all connected. So super excited to have each of you here today. Sit back, relax. Once again, welcome to Intentional Conversations podcast, and enjoy today's show. Let's the conversations begin, and that is precisely what we are about to do. If you're just tuning in, I am Dr. Nika White, your host of Intentional Conversations. And as we normally do when we kick off the top of the hour, we like to share some national observances just to make sure we are paying attention to what's happening in the world and we are finding ways to be able to support those causes. So it is Black August. We're in the month of August, and it's Black August. And the reason it's called Black August is because it is National Black Business Month, and it is also Black Philanthropy Month. And so as a philanthropist, a co-founder of a foundation, as a Black women business founder and owner, I definitely take every opportunity I can to celebrate National Black Business Month, Black Philanthropy Month, Black August in general. And I hope that you will find a way also to just uplift all of the Black businesses, support them, really be an advocate for economic inclusion is really critically important. And not just because it's August, although this is the national observance, but because it's the right thing to do. A rising tide lifts all boats. And so I want you to make sure you take this energy and attitude into further months ahead outside of the month of August. I also want you to know that tomorrow, August 9th, is International Day of the World's Indigenous People. Why is this important? It is important because this is an opportunity to raise awareness of the needs of Indigenous people and to make sure that we're educating on how to support and to uplift and to protect and advocate and stand in solidarity. So I hope that you will join me tomorrow for this occasion. Now, one of the things we often like to share with you is some upcoming opportunities. Many of you know that I am a voice of ethical, responsible AI use. I have a LinkedIn learning course that's specifically on that topic. And there is going to be on August 12th next week at 7 p.m. a live webinar, Ethics of the Speed of Innovation. And so I hope that you will join us for that conversation. I know it's going to be rich. You can scan the QR code. It's a free event, so come join us. And I look forward to having you there and a part of that topic. Also, you all have been rocking with me for quite some time, and you know that for the past several months, I have spoken a lot about Boundless. Boundless is a new initiative that I am incredibly passionate about. It is a women of color community of well being, empowerment, and leadership. And we center the entire experience around making sure that the women that are part of this community have emotional mastery. They know how to regulate their emotions, they know how to go through a spirit of being resilient as they're really navigating the complexities of today's world, and to do it in a safe, protected spot. We just launched phase 2, which includes 3 tiered phase membership options. And so scan that QR code. It takes you right to the page for you to sign up to learn more, share it out with others in your network. And I look forward to being in conversation with you if you're interested in having a one-to-one as you are deciding whether or not this is an opportunity that you want to be a part of. And I hope the answer is yes. Now, here's the part where I give you a little bit of what you can look forward to in upcoming weeks for intentional conversations. I'm super excited because August is going to be a fire month as it relates to really phenomenal speakers. And so let me tell you that on Friday, August 15th, the next Friday, I have the opportunity to welcome LaShawn Davis. And LaShawn and I are going to be discussing transforming outdated HR practices. Yes, and there are many of them that are out there, and we need to make sure we are transforming them. So join us for that conversation. You don't want to miss it. And then following that, on August the 22nd, Giselle Marcus is actually going to be my guest co-host. And there we're going to be discussing women in leadership and navigating inequalities, a topic that I am very committed to. And so I can't wait for you to be a part of our community to hear from Giselle Marcus. And then I am equally excited about who's going to be closing us out this month. Many of you have probably heard a lot about Lisa Hurley because she has a new book that's out, and it is Space to Exhale, right? She's also part of the founder of the Great Exhale, a women's community. And so Lisa is going to be talking about her journey of writing, authorship, and rest, and soft living, and ease, and self love, and affirmations, all of the things that we deserve as Black women, as women of color, as women who really are destined to take control over what we can control in order to create great prosperity for ourselves in whatever regard that prosperity and success looks like. So I hope you will join us for these riveting conversations. These all are people that I admire and I respect, and I have no doubt that you're also going to gain great value from being under their voice. So now, this is the part that I really enjoy. It gives me a chance to actually provide a formal introduction of our guest co-host. I do this every single time, and I don't just do it very haphazardly. I do it by reading the person's bio because I want you to know the accolades, the credentials, the experiences in which our guest co-hosts show up to the conversation with, because it lets you to understand why they are a voice of authority and they have been invited to this platform. And today is personal. Let me just say, this is going to be two girlfriends talking because this is exactly what it is. And I say that it's personal because Mikki Bay and I have been in community for quite some time now. Our relationship extends beyond just kind of being colleagues and spaces where we are consulting and coaching individuals around different topics. But we are also connected around this work of emotional regulation. And you'll be able to hear soon exactly how and why. Mikki Bay is a nationally recognized life coach, speaker, and emotional regulation expert. She is known as the queen of emotional regulation, and she empowers leaders by aligning emotional well-being with professional success. A former Shark Tank entrepreneur, she works with Fortune 500 companies, global brands, and universities, helping high-achieving women regulate emotions and build fulfilling lives. And so you know what to do if you've been a part of our community right now. I want you to find those emojis, those words of affirmation, the reactions, all the things. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to bring Mikki Bay. By the way, you're going to hear me say her whole name probably the whole time because she knows this. I love her name. I don't call her just Mikki. I call her Mikki Bay because baby, it's a great name. So I'm going to add her to
Thank
the
you.
spotlight. Added to the spotlight. And I am tickled pink. You're wearing pink today. It's one of my brand colors. I'm tickled pink. But I have been waiting for this moment. For those of you who aren't aware, we had this scheduled some weeks back, and I think it was going to be a holiday or
It was
something. I
like
can't remember.
Easter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we thought,
Yeah.
okay, it's Good Friday. No, we need to make sure we have the people in the room to hear this conversation. So we're going to move it out. And we did. And I'm glad that we did, although it's been a bit of a wait, a lot of
Mhm.
anticipation, but that just means it's going to be great. And so, Mickey Bay,
Yes.
before I release you to greet this audience in your own way, we have a tradition here. And that tradition is we invite our guest co-hosts to, as they are sharing their greetings and kind of just sharing a little bit more about themselves, we want you to find something that we would not know about you from hearing your bio, which we've just done, or from looking at your LinkedIn profile. So what you got?
Ooh.
What you got? You are an open book. So what you got?
Ooh, that
Yours.
is juicy and good. Well, you can kind of deduce this from my LinkedIn, but I have to always start anytime I speak and tell people that I am from Detroit, Michigan. I love my hometown of Detroit. And if you have not been recently, please go because it is actually a phenomenal city. It's had a phenomenal comeback. So if you've not been to Detroit in the last few years, I would say in the last decade, make a trip to Detroit. I am also a mom of a 6-year-old boy who just started school this week and is already causing trouble. Got a call from the teacher yesterday. So,
Oh,
so we're back. Yeah, we're back in the thick of it. Hey, Detroit in the house. Hey, Deborah, I love that. See, that's why I always tell it because it's always one of my cousins in the audience. So I love that. And
goodness.
then I would say the other thing that is newly a title added to me is I am a golfer. I just completed 6 weeks of golf lessons and I played in a golf tournament a few weeks ago. And I am absolutely loving golf as a part of my wellness and health and emotional regulation routine. So
Love
how's
that.
that?
Good for you. Yeah, that is new.
Yeah,
I feel like as long as we've been in community with each other, I've heard so many of your stories. I've heard you share a lot about a lot of things, but I've
yeah,
never heard you mention golf. And so good for you. I'm glad that you're finding
yes,
other things that really brings you joy and ease, as you are continuing to kind of master this emotional
yes,
regulation to teach others to do the same. So, okay, so you're joining the conversation today from you did all the talk about Detroit. I want people to know that you're no longer there. You now live in
right,
Atlanta, but yeah, shout out to all the folks who may be from the Detroit area because yeah, you do love Detroit. But
yes.
you're joining the conversation from Atlanta, Georgia today for those who may be interested. Okay, so I have to give a little bit of backdrop here about how Mickey Bay and I are connected. Okay. And this is not going to be a surprise to some of you because some of you are in my network that are joining our community today. And you've heard me reference this several times, especially over the past most recent months. So Mickey Bay, told you I'll use her full name. She is my ER coach. She is the reason that I am now on this path that has transformed how I show up to the world and how I want others to work and live and show up to the world. So much so that I really have been committed to integrating into all of the areas of my product and service offerings a layering of emotional regulation, emotional resilience. That is how impactful my relationship with Mickey Bay has been. And when I was introduced to her, not only was it her one-to-one coaching that was really instrumental in getting me to that place where I could have all of the things that allowed me to serve myself at the highest level of vibration. I'm using some Mickey Bay words now, but also it has allowed me from a personal perspective to be able to better navigate the complexity of what we are experiencing right now in this hard thing called life, especially with all the political and social complex issues that are finding its way into every single day's journey. It has been life changing, and I want everyone to have the benefit of that same type of value, especially women who look like me. So, anyway, I wanted to lay that out because that's why I said today is personal. Today is not just bringing on another co-host. I don't see that as today. I see today as almost like a launching pad of this deeper movement and broader awareness opportunity for me to join Mickey Bay in what she's been crusading for years now, and to do it in a way that really meaningfully touched people's lives. And so I just had to give y'all that little bit of backdrop. So let's jump right in. Mickey Bay, Well,
Yes.
tell us your backstory. How did you even get to this place to where for now, many, 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 many years, you have built your whole practice on helping people to emotionally regulate? Tell us what it is, how you got started, and why does it even matter?
I will answer that question, but first, I would be remiss if I didn't say I am both humbled and honored to be here and that you have allowed me to come into your life, into your professional life, into your personal life, and now into your community. So just thank you for that. And you got me tearing up just hearing how it has impacted you. Really, that is why I do what I do. I feel that my purpose is to help women feel the best they possibly can in their internal environment. We have to be so many things for so many people. And I just do not believe in giving the world your best before you get the best for yourself. And so that really is my purpose and my mission. And I came to emotional regulation kind of by accident. I mean, it was not something I knew about, but I had a really hard situation I was going through. At the time, I was a VP in pharmaceuticals, and it was a very high powered position. I kind of felt like I was on a glass cliff, like I'd made it to this position, but I didn't have any support when I got there. And I was also a new mom at that time. When I got to that position, I had a 1 year old, and my 1 year old had a eating disorder since he was 8 months old. And so I was going to doctors and I was driving. I was living on the East Coast at the time. I was driving from Delaware to Baltimore, taking him to Johns Hopkins and trying to figure out what was going on with my baby. This is my first baby, right? And he's not eating. And so it was a very, very high stress time. And even though I had that going on at home, I still had to show up at work. I was leading even though I was a VP, technically, I should have been president because I was the highest. I was the highest in the country. So I was a country head. Like I was the head of the US for sales and marketing. And my company was based in Switzerland. So I'm it. I'm the one here. And there was a lot of pressure on me at that time. I had the pressure of being a Black woman chosen for that role. I also had the pressure of, a lot of people felt like I didn't deserve it because I'd gone from entry level sales rep to VP in 5 years, which is unheard of. And so people were like, well, who is she and why does she get to do it? And so I felt like this tremendous amount of pressure, but also I felt like I was ready and I wanted to show that I could do this. And even though I had something super important going on at home, I had to kind of keep it together so that I could
Um,
manage what was going on at work. I wanted that seat so badly. A lot of us get into corporate and we have our eyes set on where we want to go. And I started corporate late. So I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. So my entrepreneurial journey has always been underneath all of my corporate jobs.
yeah,
And so
yeah, same, yeah.
yeah, I was both for the longest time and at a high level. So even in my VP job, I was coaching on the weekends. So I've been working 7 days a week for 10 years. It's been a long time. And so I found emotional regulation when I hit a wall. And it there was a point in that time where I said something's got to give. I have to make a decision. And my mental health was at stake. And I didn't know burnout was a clinical term. I thought it was
Right,
just something you say when you just kind of like need to nap for,
right.
an extended period of time. But no, I was clinically burnt out. And what that looked like was I could no longer push through. And I think you know what I mean by that. A lot of times, especially as Black women, we get to a place where we're like, we have to do it and there's no other choice. And so I have to power through and I have to muster up whatever I have to do to make sure that I don't let everyone down. Well, when you have burnout, that's no longer an option. And
Right.
I got to a place where I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't taking care of my child. I didn't care. I called my boss and I said, today's my last day. I won't be coming back. I got to go focus on myself and on my child. And that is when I discovered emotional regulation and it literally saved my life.
Thank you so much for vulnerably sharing your story. And I think that it's probably resonating with so many of us. When we think about our nervous system being activated, um, there's a lot of things that, may come into play in that moment. And one of the biggest things that I have learned through, again, being under your tutelage and then even further immersing myself into this broader topic of emotional regulation, emotional resilience, just emotional mastery, is
Mhm.
the importance of being so self-aware, right, of what's happening, when that's happening, what those triggers are, to where then you can activate some type of solutioning. And so what I love about the way in which you show up to this work is it's not just about awareness that this happens and what this is. Because many people, when I start talking about, they're like, "Oh, so is that what that is? I didn't know really it had a name." But yeah, that's me too. But they can't
Yeah.
really talk about what it is. They just know that yes, they can identify with it. They feel the same. And for me, what I experienced was that my nervous system felt constantly, I mean, constantly activated, and not necessarily in a good way, activated in more of a nervous kind of anxious way, to where I'm like, why am I going to the negativity? Why am I infusing meaning into something that really has no validity at all? And
Mhm.
I didn't know it, but it was wearing me down. It was wearing me down. And so I was so glad to be able to have the language and the understanding that this is something, and there's something we can do about it, right? And so I want to just comment on when you shared the burnout piece. You're so right. People toss that word around almost like they tossed around, I have a migraine. And there's a difference between a headache and a migraine. If you have ever
Yes.
had migraines, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like,
Yes.
to your point, that's also how we look at burnout. And
Mhm.
what I was realizing is that if I did not get this under control, being able to regulate my emotions in a way where I was more in control over how I was interacting with what was happening within my nervous system, that I was going to clearly find myself in that place of true burnout, not just saying it, but true
Yes.
burnout.
Correct.
Because I could go down a litany of things that I identify with in terms of a mom, a wife, and so we all wear those many different hats, and we do not realize how close we can be, especially as women of color. So I love that we are having this conversation today. So when you think about emotional regulation and how it has so many implications to the workplace, because a lot of your work is kind of one to one, but you do
Mhm.
often go in and do talks that certainly will impact leaders and people that you are coaching one to one, or leaders within their respective organizations. How important is this topic of emotional regulation to healthy leaders and healthy cultures?
I think it is the business strategy no one's talking about. I
Yep.
think it is critical that we address the emotional state of people who are in the workplace, because I think there's, depending on where you work, right? There could be a culture where it's unacceptable to show emotion at work,
Right.
right? I mean, I have had, well, listen, I have had outbursts on national TV. I was on Shark Tank and I was known for crying on Shark Tank, right? And so, and I ended up writing a op-ed in the Huffington Post after that. And I said, listen, if you listen to leaders like Brene Brown, if you hear Ariana Huffington talk about it, you have to emote. When you suppress, I think leaders sometimes think that being in control means that you're regulated. That is not what that means. And
Mm.
so when we are constantly controlling our emotions, we are suppressing, and you only have two options when you're suppressing. You're going to implode or explode. So somebody's going to get it. At some point, you are either going to have a situation like I did where you're imploding. So you're having physical signs, you're having maybe some mental breakdown, or you're exploding, which means your team is going to get it, or the people who are with you working closely are going to be at the receiving end of you not being emotionally regulated. So I think it's vitally critical. And then how many people quit jobs because the leadership or the
Right.
team dynamics, right? The team dynamics are unhealthy. And so most people typically are not calling out because they're sick, they're calling out because they are actually emotionally overwhelmed. And so if you think
Mhm.
about it just from the perspective of how much productivity businesses are losing, this is actually a business critical issue to solve, because it's going directly to how much money you're able to make because your workforce is out.
Yeah, 100%, which is one of the reasons that I felt such a sense of agency in trying to infuse this into my work, because most of my work is directly with organizations. And I am always, thinking about and executing curation of these learning experiences, leadership development experiences to really empower those individuals. And I think one of the best ways we can empower people to empower other people that fall under their tutelage is to make sure that they are self-regulated. Because when
Yes.
they take the time to really understand and be self-aware about what's happening with me and how can I best show up in this moment for my people, that's when you're going to be able to see healthier workplaces. And
Mhm.
when I think about the topic that is constantly coming up for me with clients these days, it is about how do we future-proof our leaders? And really, what they're asking is how do we get our leaders to be able to better navigate the complexity, the uncertainty, the ambiguity of the world? And they're realizing that we've had some pretty significant situations, like the pandemic, for one, that did not fully that allowed us to realize we weren't really prepared for that. And I
Yeah.
believe that part of being a future proof leader and being able to navigate with that level of agility is if you are so in tune with your body and you know how to emotionally regulate. Because leaders set the tone, and then others will kind of follow that.
You cannot be future proof if you cannot regulate your nervous system, because if you are making decisions with a dysregulated nervous system, you literally cannot access your executive function. So your brain is
Literally.
not working, and you're making a decision from lack and from scarcity. And if you are at the helm, that is not how you want to be making decisions. So the idea is to get yourself back into a neutral state to be able to make decisions and see things clearly, because you also can't listen to guidance when you're in fight or flight. And
Yeah.
so, even if people are trying to tell you what's the best way to go, you're going to be gung ho ahead on what the ideas are that you have, because you're just trying to get to the next thing. So I think if we're talking about how do we future proof anything, it definitely starts with your internal environment, which means you have to be able to pinpoint what you're feeling in the first place. And I think sometimes we look at the scale of emotions and we can only say we're happy or sad. And there's so many different things that are
Yeah.
in between and on the spectrum. And we're looking at it as if emotions are good or bad. And there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. It's
Beautiful.
just trying to send a message. And if we are bypassing the message, the emotion keeps coming back stronger and stronger and stronger until you have to take account to what it's trying to tell you. And so
Yeah.
the emotion is really just energy. So what I tell my clients is that no matter if it's a level 10 energy of excitement, and let's say that's just like the let's just call it joules for fun, right? So you have 10 joules of energy over here for excitement, and you have 10 joules of anger over here. 10 joules is 10 joules. You can
Right.
transmute the anger to be just as powerful as the excitement, and you can use it in the exact same way for your good. And so that's really what we need to teach people, that you shouldn't be afraid of feeling the emotion. It's more important that you get the message and ask yourself some introspective questions. Why is this showing up? And I always say you have to go in before you go out. So one of the things that I definitely experienced when I was in corporate is that everybody's doing this, blaming,
Mhm. Get that
right?
burnout. Yeah.
Yes, and I would always tell my team, don't come in here telling me about what anybody else did. Tell me about yourself. Tell me
Mhm.
about what you did. Tell me about what's the solutions that you're bringing to the table, and then let's work from that place. And I think if everyone takes that stance where I am going to focus on my own regulation first, then you're going to be able to deal and co-regulate with your teams a lot better.
Yeah. Oh, I want to dig into and unpack the whole co-regulating with your team, because I think that's important. Again, I think that that's the way that we can help embed this into a culture, is when everybody is of that same mindset that this is important enough for us to be able to have some practices that
Absolutely.
we are following. I want to talk about the suppression of our emotions, because that is what
Mhm.
most of us do. Most of us will either avoid it and we'll suppress it because we want to avoid it, and it just comes right back, as you mentioned. And
Mhm.
so when people are doing that, I want you just to expound on exactly what is happening in the body and how does that show forth in terms of their ability to kind of navigate just interactions, relationships, things of that nature.
So you can think of it like a bucket, right? Like if you put a bucket and the ceiling is leaking and you put a bucket there to catch the water, At some point, if the leak is going long enough, that bucket is going to overflow. That's how
Mhm.
suppression is. So
Mhm.
you can only suppress it for a time. At a certain point, there has to be an escape of energy. And again, emotions are just energy. So if you are not moving that energy, it has to go somewhere. It's going to create dis-ease in your body, or you are going to have an outburst of some sort. If you see, you see it on the news all the time, you see it on social media all the time, where people are having outbursts and, sometimes even violent outbursts, right? And so emotional regulation is not a luxury, it is absolutely a necessity. And it's definitely a necessity in the workplace if you really want to have success, for sure, for leaders.
Yeah. And there's nothing at all wrong with feeling. We need to feel. We need those emotions because as you mentioned, those emotions, they are messages. They are really
Hmm.
important intellectual um things that we can leverage in order to position us to our highest self and to allow us to really be able to build and cultivate, relationships when we know that they can be hard if we are just
Hmm.
operating out of dysregulation. And so, what are
Yeah.
some of the ways that this shows up and can be valuable in people's personal lives? Because we've talked about it from a professional perspective. But what the thing that I found to be so advantageous is that this is one of those skill sets to where it is very horizontal. It applies across every single environment, every
Hmm.
dynamic. It has its place and it has a very valuable place across all of those areas. And so let's talk about it
Yeah.
from a personal perspective.
Yeah, so I always say your triggers are a map to where you still need to heal. And so we
Mhm.
should not be afraid of triggers. I get so excited when I get triggered because I'm like, oh, yay, I get to use a tool, right? I get to use my skill. So emotional regulation is really about, first of all, you have to have awareness. 90% of emotional regulation is learning what you do when something happens, right? So I know for me, my biggest trigger is disrespect. So I know that there are going to be times in life where I will be disrespected in my personal life, in my professional life. And so, what is my plan when disrespect appears on my path? It's an opportunity for me to ask myself, well, what is it about this that makes me feel disrespected? And how can I deal with the emotion of disrespect, regardless of what is happening externally? Because there is more than one situation that can happen that will cause me to feel disrespected. So it's not situation specific. And that's what we really need to understand about the emotion. If the emotion is present, it means that the emotion needs to be dealt with, and there's a message for you in that. So I think about it like this: how you do anything is how you do everything, and everything is really the same subject. So, how
Mhm.
people are at home, in a certain way, they are also like that at work, but there's usually a little bit more of a mask on at work because they're paying you. But at home, that's when people really, really show out. And I mean that in the worst way, because these people love you, and these people are going to give you grace more than the people at work are going to give you grace. So your interpersonal relationships are such a great place for you to practice emotional regulation, because you're going to be triggered mostly by people who you have a connection to. It is much easier if a stranger comes up to me and calls me a name for me to brush that off than if, my boyfriend or my ex-husband or somebody calls me a name. That's going to make me feel that, because there is an emotional connection between that person and myself. But this, again, when you are triggered, it is your responsibility to
Yeah.
clean up that trigger. It is not the person's responsibility. And I think, unfortunately, we aren't taught that, right? And
Yeah.
so when you feel the hurt come in because someone has bad behavior, we want to immediately focus on their bad behavior. Two things can be true. They can have bad behavior, but you are also having an emotion that is manufactured on the inside of you. So why don't we deal with the part that we can actually control, which is
Well,
what's happening on the inside of us?
yeah, that is so good, and I think that that was kind of the turning point for me. And again, it's all about go in to go out. How do we self evaluate? Well, what's happening to me? Why am I approaching this situation in this manner? And I agree with you, Jeanette. You actually reiterated some of your words, Mikki, in the chat. Triggers are a map to where you need to heal. I love that as well. Those words
Yeah.
are, yeah, those
And
words are
I want to
definitely
say something else
practical.
about the triggers really quickly. Um, So I want to give Esther Perel, who is a phenomenal psychologist, I want to give you her definition of healing. So this isn't the Mikki Bay definition. This is from Esther. But I say this all the time because I think sometimes when we think about healing, we think that it is complete, like there's going to be a bow on it at the end. And the way that I view it is how Esther views healing. Triggers may always be there, but your capacity will expand. So, for instance, if someone cuts me off on 75 in Atlanta, right? If somebody cuts me off, it may, I might be jarred, but I'm not going to lay on my horn. I'm not going to be cursing in my car. I'm not going to be upset for 15 minutes after someone cuts me off, because that no longer is something that is going to get a rise out of me. If someone cuts in front of me at the bank, I don't really care, right? If I have a situation that's in an interpersonal relationship where there's been some disconnection, that might touch me a little bit more, but I also might be able to get over it a lot quicker. So
Yeah.
the idea is that when you start to become aware of what your triggers are, and you start to identify what your behaviors are when the triggers are present, now you can interrupt the pattern program, which is your nervous system. So when we say nervous system, we're talking about the operating system that you were programmed from birth, from society, from religion, from all the things that you think that you are. That is how you naturally react. So I told you guys I'm from Detroit. My natural reaction is to pop off. That is my natural reaction. But I have learned that about myself, that when disrespect happens, I can't just go off to my other alter ego, pop off Patty. I have to bring myself back to the middle, and then I get to decide how I want to respond and if a response is necessary. So I want you to think of triggers as a ever evolving capacity of healing. It is not necessarily that the trigger is going to be dissipated. It may never dissipate fully, but you can definitely get it to a point where it's very, 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 very manageable.
That is such a good point to amplify, and it goes back to I used the language earlier, emotional mastery. Do we really master this? No, but can we manage it better because we've been
Yes.
practicing it and we have all of our tools and our toolkit to be able to self-soothe, some
Yep.
more Mickey Bay language. And so I want to go there now because I feel like whenever I have a chance to share with audiences, I want to make sure that I leave them with something that's really practical, not just the knowledge and the awareness of what's happening and what it is, but what can we do about it? So I would love for
Mhm.
you to share some of the everyday practical tools or exercises that you recommend often to your clients who are looking to start improving. Because again, there's a spectrum here. Start
Mhm.
baby steps, right? Doesn't
Yep.
happen overnight, but to start improving, not mastering, but improving their emotional regulation skills.
I'm going to give you three things, but the first thing is, if you don't do anything else, do this one. Start to embrace the pause.
Power of the pause. Yeah.
Power of the pause. You're going to pause, take a breath, and then you decide. So you're going to choose your response. So when we are reacting, that's on the autopilot program. We actually need to give ourselves a moment because your brain hasn't caught up to what's happening to you yet. So the first thing is to start recognizing what are the signs that you're triggered. Is always going to be inside of your body first. So your body knows before your brain knows. So for me, I stop breathing. That's how I know I'm triggered. I'm like, oh, I'm holding my breath. Okay, something's happening.
Yeah.
The next thing is I have a thought. There's a consistent thought that I have every time that I'm triggered. And so when I have that thought, I know that I'm triggered. And then the next point is I need to take a breath because my brain believes I'm in actual danger. And there are times where you may be in physical danger or emotional danger, but most of the time when we're triggered, it is just a kind of like a little jab that comes in. And so we have to allow our brains a moment to catch up. So we need to take that breath. You're going to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the nose, which helps to get your parasympathetic nervous system activated, which is going to calm you down and let your brain know there is not an actual tiger chasing me off of a cliff. Because otherwise, you're going to start creating hormones to help you get out of danger. So you're going to have adrenaline present. You'll have cortisol, which is a stress hormone that creates the belly fat. And you're also going to have testosterone because, again, if you're going to be in a fight, you need that. So the idea here is that you're giving yourself a moment to gather the information, and then you decide. Also, do not feel like you have to make a action after you pause. You can say, nothing to see here. I can deal with this later. I'm going to put it in the parking lot. If I'm ever in a public place, and like say for instance there's a like you're at a conference or something and you get really triggered and it's just not appropriate for you to continue the conversation, you just say, you know what, thank you so much for sharing, I'm going to have to get back to you on that,
Mhm.
and get out of Dodge. Your first goal is to get yourself to emotional safety. If you're not at a place where you can answer, do not answer. The second thing is, I would say, name it to tame it. So when your emotions are strong and present, the first thing they want, they're just naggy little pests, and they're going to be like, I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry. And it wants you to say, I realize I'm angry. 9 times out of 10, once you're able to say, I'm angry, because we have a problem even just saying that. We don't even want
No.
to admit, when
Because
we're
we're
feeling,
suppressing it. We're trying to suppress it maybe, but instead of
yeah.
feeling through it, go and getting through it. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I think most people don't want to claim it because they don't know how to get themselves back from it. So if I admit that I'm angry, then now what do I do? Now that I'm angry, what do I do? How do I get myself out of this anger? So it's easier for me to just say, "Oh no, I'm fine," and keep
Yeah.
pushing along until that bucket goes
Go
over, right?
throws.
So
Go
name
through.
entertainment. And then I will give you my favorite emotional regulation tool. This is my personal favorite, which is journaling. I think journaling is one of the best tools you can use because you don't have to edit yourself. You can just give it all to the journal. You don't have to think about how you're saying it. It doesn't have to be perfect English. I have horrible handwriting. I don't even care. When I'm writing in my journal, nobody can read it but me. It's not for anybody else but me. But when I journal and I get it all out, I usually don't even need to have a conversation after that. And so those are
Mhm.
my 3 tips to make this really practical. And honestly, the first one is enough to get you on a serious, amazing road to emotional regulation. If you can remember to pause, breathe, and choose, you are on your way.
Pause, breathe, and choose. Absolutely. Those are really good practical ideas. I love the fact that you brought up, and these are my words, not yours, but when we think about when our nervous system is activated and we feel unsafe, we automatically, assume that that's danger. But there's a
Mhm.
difference between danger and discomfort. We're probably just feeling
Correct.
uncomfortable in that moment. So again, the pause helps us to assess that.
Yeah.
Is my person really threatened right now, or am I just uncomfortable because of what's happening right now? And I think that's important. And
Let
I
me
love also
interject something right there, Dr.
sure.
Nika. So, emotional regulation is really exactly about that. It's about being able to sit in all of the range of emotions and
Yeah.
realizing that the human experience is a feeling experience. So, we are supposed to be
Yes.
feeling as humans, and you are supposed to be able to feel everything from this end of the spectrum to this end of the spectrum. So, you can just start acknowledging, like, oh, I'm working properly. I can feel anger. I can feel jealousy. Sometimes I experience emotions that I don't experience often. And I kind of chuckle to myself because it's like, oh, yeah, you're not immune. You still get to feel things on the spectrum because this is the human experience. So that's another reason why we have to normalize people learning what is really on the spectrum of emotions so that you know what you are feeling and then you can deal with it accordingly.
Yeah, there are levels to this thing. There are levels to
Mhm.
this thing. I love that. And what I think is also interesting about it is that it feels very therapeutic to where maybe sometimes people will confuse this as, is this therapy or is this really coaching? And one of the first things that I asked you, I was like, okay, Mickey Bay, I have a therapist. Is this going to be like having another therapist, pay for another therapist? So what is it? You were like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you the difference. And so for those in our audience who are probably thinking, okay, so what is the difference between like an emotional regulation coach and then like a therapist? So
So
give us
I
the
can't
answer.
speak for, I think I'm the only person that actually calls myself an emotional regulation coach. I think people are like popping up now where you're hearing a lot of people talking about nervous system regulation, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I've never heard anybody else call themselves an emotional regulation coach but me. But I will tell you the difference between working with a coach in general and especially with my coaching is I always say that Therapy, first of all, it's mental health. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a coach. So I work from a completely different paradigm. And I think therapy is phenomenal. I always have a therapist, I always have a coach. And I would say 95% of my clients also are in therapy, but we work differently. So
Mhm.
fundamentally, I am working from the perspective of I don't need to go all the way back to your childhood and figure out why you are the way that you are. I really don't care why you are the way that you are. I care, do you want to be how you are? Do you want to be
Mhm.
this person that we see today, or do you want to optimize who you are for today and into the future? So I am present and future based. Most of therapy, not all, but most therapy is going to be dealing with the background, right? They're going to
Mhm.
go all the
Mhm.
way back and they're going to deal with your childhood trauma and all of that stuff. I don't touch any of that. And also, therapy typically holds space and I hold you accountable. So
Yeah.
nobody comes to Mickey Bay who don't want to know the truth. Y'all got to be
Ain't that
masochists to come to me.
look, ain't that the
Because,
truth?
yeah, because I was going to say this is a better question for you to answer because you've been
Yes.
coached by me. But
Yes.
I think the reason why people get such astronomical results with me is because I am authentic. I share what I'm going through and how I have overcome things, and I
Mm.
am very transparent about that. I do not try to act like I have it all together just because I'm the coach. I'm still living life as well. And I
Yeah.
do also think that it's really important for people to see an example of how you have made it through the hard times, right?
Yes, no, I love
I,
that. You referenced the Pop-Off Patty earlier, and I chuckled inside because I know Pop-Off Patty because I've heard so many stories about Pop-Off Patty. So, just to align and attest to what you're saying about that authenticity from a coach perspective, that is huge. And I did have the question about what is the difference between like the therapy side of things, and so I wanted to bring that to this conversation because there could be others that were curious about it. But what I can
yeah.
say now that I am like, what, I don't know, 10 months into really being immersed into
Mhm.
this whole process is that the two work in tandem. They are very
Yes.
powerful together. They're powerful individually, but when you bring them together, it really does create this exponential kind of impact that I believe, for me, has been
Mhm.
tremendous. And so, if some of you are kind of thinking about, well, what's the difference there? Okay, I'm noticing the time, and there are probably many of you like me that you're like, oh my gosh, the time is winding down. I want this to continue for at least like another hour or so because we could go on and on and on. And trust me, Mickey Bay and I can talk. But
Yes.
but but we do have an hour that we want to try to keep this contained into. And so I want to just give you a warning that I'm going to go to another question so you can percolate on your thoughts and your curiosities. But I will give you a chance to present your questions or your commentary. If you're on Loom, I'm sorry, Loom, Zoom. Loom is such a thing, but we're not on Loom right now. We're on Zoom. But if
Yeah.
you're on Zoom and part of our community here, I will give you the opportunity if you use the raise hand feature to unmute yourself and to share your questions or comments live, or you can certainly go to the chat and we'll take as many as we can. If you're on LinkedIn Live, we have not forgotten about you. Go to the comment section. My team is watching that. We're going to bring those questions over into our chat here. While you're thinking about that, I want to go to the next question so that we don't waste not a moment of precious time that we have with the Mickey Day. But I want to talk about embodiment because embodiment is such
Oh,
a big part of how in which you coach and you show up to this work and you help others to be able to self-soothe and to come up with how they want to approach being at their highest self. So let's talk about
mhm.
embodiment.
Okay. So before you get to embodiment, you have to choose your identity. It's
Mhm.
really important that you strip away the programming of who you think you're supposed to be and actually decide who you want to be. And then once we have our chosen identity intact and we know her, we know what she wears, we know what she thinks, we know the habits that she has, then we have to decide to be her day in and day out. And so the best example I can give you of embodiment is in my own life where, the last 4 years I've been losing weight using emotional regulation as a part of that process. And the first thing that I did was tell myself I'm a healthy woman because I believed I was a fat woman. And so I was fat, for 20 years. And nobody get on me about calling myself fat because I believed that at that time. So I've lost 110 pounds over the last 4 years. And I had to change my identity. But once I decided I was healthy, my body still was 110 pounds bigger, when I was saying I'm a healthy person. But the thing that people don't understand about identity is that behavior follows identity.
Yeah.
So once I decided I'm a healthy woman, I started making healthier decisions. And I started doing things that I just thought to myself, well, what would a healthy woman do? Oh, she would probably go to Kava instead of Popeyes. And I started doing that, right? So embodiment is about how can I get back on my road every single day? How can I really have a felt experience of this chosen identity? And I have moved myself really into every chapter of my life through this process of deciding my identity and then embodying that day in and day out. And those of my coaching clients, y'all know what my next identity is because I tell you about my next identity all the time, right?
All the
Because
time.
one of the reasons I talk about it is because I'm reminding myself, get back on the horse. It doesn't matter if my reality looks like that today. I know where I'm going and I am acting like that woman today. I make decisions like that version of myself today. And all of my habits, everything that I do in my day-to-day life, my thoughts are from that reality. So at some point it's going to match up. And that's what
Yeah.
embodiment is. Embodiment is really having a felt experience of the identity you've chosen.
Yeah, and you also talk about it as the I am, and that was one of the
Yes.
most powerful aspects, I believe, of the coaching exercise was, again, just taking removing the stories, everyone else's stories
Mhm.
about you, and then, narrating your own story and believing that even before that story is fully realized. And I thought that was so
Exactly.
powerful because if we're not waiting for this to happen, we are acting as though it's already here and it's happening. And
Well,
that
and
shift
she
was
is
so
already here.
significant. Yes, yes, absolutely. So say
She's
more
already
about that.
here.
Say more about that to expound
Yeah.
upon what
So,
you mean by that.
I again I'll use my weight loss as an example. I've the person you see today, I've always been her. I am this is the Mickey Bay that I've been for the last 41 years. I have been the same, but I have revealed a version of myself that I had to create the conditions for her to appear. So I'm a more
Oh,
optimized version of the person that I've been the last 41 years with some tweaks, right? Because I started becoming aware like, hey, I don't really like that I do this, or I don't really like that when I am angry, I want to eat fried chicken. I don't really like that when I'm lonely, I want to go and get chocolate cake. And I started to become aware of how my emotions were driving my behavior, right? And so when we start to look at that and we map our emotions, you can see it in black and white. You can see
yeah,
exactly who you are in black and white if you just start tracking your emotions and how what you were thinking and feeling when that emotion showed up and what you did. You can change your life just from that perspective. So I want people to really understand how important your emotions are.
mhm,
At the beginning of my journey, just my own personal journey, when I was about 24, I was really, really into law of attraction and manifestation, right? And I still love it, but I don't need it as much now because if you are feeling good, you are a natural magnet for all of your desires anyway. So you don't
yeah,
need to learn to manifest. You are always constantly manifesting by your internal environment, your internal state being at a high vibrational place. But the point is, you cannot draw anything into your life when your nervous system is fried. You're only going to
mhm,
draw in more of the stuff that you don't want. So this week, twice, I've had to speak to two different groups about money mindset. And this is one of the places where people really get tripped up with money mindset. It's lots of people who have lots of money who still have a scarcity mindset.
right,
So,
right,
it can be just as disorienting to have a lot of money if your nervous system is not primed for that, as it is to have no money. And
yeah,
so the goal is no matter where you are on that spectrum, as far as having a lot of money or no money, do you think there are people who don't have any money who have a regulated nervous system?
mm,
Yep.
mhm,
Are there
mhm,
people who have a lot of money who do not have a regulated nervous system?
yep,
Absolutely. So why
yep,
don't we choose to be the person who is living an abundant life across the board, not just in money, right? But in relationships, in love, in joy, in peace. You're abundant in all of these areas because your nervous system is primed and ready to receive that.
mhm. So, so good. So, 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 so good. Okay, so Andrea Payne, her question is, what are some recommendations you can offer on tracking your emotions, apps, journals? You reference that. So, what are some recommendations that are your go-to?
Yeah, so your journal is fine. I think sometimes we want fancy, schmancy. Dr. Nika knows I am not the one that's gonna give you a worksheet. I'll be like, look, I told you what to do, write it down.
Yes.
So I don't use apps. I carry a notebook with me pretty much everywhere I go. And I have, when I say a million and one, sitting at my desk, I have a million and one notebooks everywhere.
Oh, something about pen and
And
paper. Yep.
Yep, I'm a pen and paper girl. I'm
Mhm,
still old school. Or you can also put it in your notes in your phone. That has worked
mhm.
for a lot of my clients. The more important thing, believe it or not, even if you don't write it down, is the awareness. I
Yes.
am fine if you do not write it down. If you just become more aware of your emotional state throughout the day, believe it or not, that's 90% of the work. So if you can become aware that like every day at 8:30 when you're rushing to get the kids out, you are feeling, anxious, that is golden information because now we can start to say, okay, how do I want to feel? If anxiousness is not my ideal feeling, how do I want to feel at 8:30 when I know I'm rushing to get three kids out the door and to get myself to work? How would I like that experience to be? And you start planning your life based on how you want your life to feel, not the default emotion of what it has been in the past.
Yeah. So I journal as well, and journal is a really great recommendation for kind of tracking. Something else that I have found to be a good way of tracking is being very paying attention when people are commenting on maybe how you've shown up. One quick example was my husband and I were having a spiritual conversation last night, and just kind of went about our way. And then this morning he was like, "Thank you for how you responded to that." He said, "I realized that I was kind of this. I know, I know." And so I realized I was at this place to where I didn't really have an answer for it, so it was kind of agitating me a little bit, and instead of you kind of, matching my mood, you just, gave me my and I thought, "You know what? Yeah, that was me, emotionally regulating." So anyway, again, this
Yeah.
works horizontally, is across all areas. And you've given us so many examples today, whether it's money, whether it's in professional life, whether it's in, if we have habits that we want to change to have a healthier lifestyle, so many different things. This is, I believe, such an important ingredient to being able to live a fulfilling life is when we can regulate our emotions. And so,
Hmm.
okay, I want to ask one question, and I'm going to let you close this out, Mickey Bay, to share with us whatever it is that we have not talked about today. Because again, we could talk all
Ooh,
day
okay.
long, that you really have a lot of energy around that you want this community to know. But
Sure.
speaking of community, I think that when you are on this journey of becoming an emotionally regulated person, with emotional kind of resilience, it can be hard. It can feel deflating because you're like, oh, I missed the mark then. I didn't really use all my tools, right? And so let's talk about how important community is when it
Hmm.
comes to, sustaining emotional well being.
So community is vital. And I think too often high achievers isolate for healing, partially because you don't want people to know you even have a problem. And
Right,
so the vulnerability is really important. And when you get into community, what's so cool about it is that you learn that you're not the only one. Like I think we think that we are the only people that have these problems. And when you
right.
get into community, you get to hear other people saying, oh, yeah, I have problems with my kids too. Oh, yeah, I'm having issues with microaggressions. Oh, yeah, I'm going through a divorce. And so it just really helps to kind of normalize the things that we are going through. I think it's also really important too because there is an energy in a container, right? So when we
Yeah,
are in the container of having a group setting that is consistent, you start to develop a co-regulation with those people. And so you can come in not feeling your best, but baby, on my Thursday night group sessions, we all leave feeling good, right? Because we are all coming with the same intention of I want to leave everything that is bothering me right here. I'm going to get supported from my sisters. We got a group chat that's just on fire all the time, So, I think it's vital to find community and to find support. And even if you're not in, you don't have the capacity to have a therapist or a coach, you can still find places where you can feel like there's a sense of belonging, where you can find some emotional safety. So I would encourage you to seek out those places where you feel most comfortable to be vulnerable in your true self.
100%. I hope you all have enjoyed today as much as I have enjoyed today. I told you it was going to be personal, and I literally I could sit here and just continue to engage in conversation with Mickey Bay. But we are out of time now, so I want to thank this community for showing up today. If you have found this conversation to be enriching and insightful, then share it out with others. The podcast will be available on Tuesday of next week, and the replay will be available just this afternoon. So share it, share it, share it. Many ways to get this content. And we hope to see you back next week for another episode of Intentional Conversations podcast. But before we let you go, I would love for Mickey Bay to close us out by sharing whatever's on your heart, Mickey Bay. What do you want the people to know?
I want people to know I teach this because I need this, right?
Oh,
I live my life from the standpoint of I am always trying to emotionally regulate. I'm naturally a passionate person, and I've had to learn how to harness that passion for my good and not to unleash it on people because I couldn't control how I was feeling. And so I want to just say that emotional regulation is for you. It's an inside job. You get the benefit first. I feel like my best self right now because I am not fighting an internal battle between myself and myself. And so that is what I hope people take from this conversation is that yes, your career will improve. Yes, your marriage will improve. Yes, your interpersonal relationships with your kids and all of that will improve. But the number one person that gets the benefit of you learning the skill of emotional regulation is you.
it's you.
Yes.
Mic drop. Nothing else left to say. We hope to see you back all next week again for another episode of Intentional Conversations podcast. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Thank you for
Thank you
being
for
here.
having me.